Certification Simplified for SOC 2 and SOC for Cybersecurity. Hello, and welcome to this series of Certification Simplified presentations covering both system and organization controls, called SOC, for service organizations and SOC for cybersecurity. Today, we'll present an expert's guide to audits, attestation, report, and certification. Brought to you by Dr. Robert Ruparver, Chief Information Security Officer at InfoGuard Cybersecurity, a one-stop cybersecurity service provider. We'll look at what SOC is, why it's important, and how it works. Then we'll dive deeper into SOC compliance, audits, and certification reports. Who the intended users are, what are the benefits, what are the SOC suite of services, the different types of SOC compliance, what you need to know to get certified, and how InfoGuard helps clients get ready for the SOC 2 or SOC for cybersecurity certifications. What is System and Organization Controls Compliance? SOC compliance is an independent security audit and certification report that allows a service organization to provide assurance and demonstrate to its stakeholders, such as customers, partners, senior business leaders, investors, and the board of directors, that the service is being provided securely and reliably. Service organization controls apply to either service organizations, which is called SOC for service organizations, such as SOC 2, or applies to the organization's cybersecurity program, called SOC for cybersecurity. Let's take a look at SOC 2. SOC 2 is examination and reporting on controls at a service organization relevant to security, availability, processing integrity of a system, and confidentiality or privacy of the information processed by the system. Why SOC 2? And what is the rationale behind SOC 2? As data breaches and hacks continue to proliferate, information security becomes ever more important. Firms use outsourcing and cloud computing to increase revenues. But these approaches also create additional security risks arising from interactions with the organizations providing these services and their systems. These risks pose a threat to finances, operations, customers, and reputations at user entities. Stakeholders at user entities, including customers, prospects, biz partners, BOD, executive management, government, and investors, will want to know that the service organization can be trusted with customers' information and that the information is secure with them. So, to build customer trust and confidence, service organizations must demonstrate that the company has adequate controls to safeguard the information with which they have been entrusted. The solution is achieve SOC 2 compliance and demonstrate security of customers' data, and communicate to interested parties the designs and effectiveness of their information security via a SOC 2 certification report. Developed by the AICPA, SOC 2 is specifically designed for service providers and has been widely accepted as a U.S. standard for information security. A SOC 2 certification report carries far more weight than giving your word that you are sincere, since it's an independent audit performed by a third-party firm. In this presentation, we'll cover some common questions that come up related to SOC 2 examination and certification reports. So let's dive in. In the past, SOC stood for Service Organizations Controls and applied only to service-level organization types and covered system-level controls. In 2017, the AICPA redefined the acronym and introduced the term System and Organization Controls, SOC, and added other types of organizations in addition to service organizations types, and also introduced a new internal control level called Entity-Level Controls to refer to the suite of services practitioners may provide at such organizations. What is a SOC 2 certification report? SOC 2 reports or certifications help users to assess and address the risks that arise from their relationships with a service organization by providing an internal control reports on how the service organization system deals with security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. A SOC 2 report is not a certification, but it's commonly referred to as one. The SOC 2 certification report is a way to demonstrate to your clients that you will protect their information in your environment with a base level set of information security controls. The intended users of a SOC 2 report are the service organizations and the stakeholders. SOC 2 reports are received and used by service providers, such as SaaS companies that process or store sensitive data for their clients. Some non-traditional service providers also receive SOC 2 reports. For example, law firms and consultancies are starting to receive SOC 2 reports more frequently. SOC 2 reports are also used by stakeholders, such as customers, regulators, business partners, suppliers, and the board of directors of the user organization to ensure that there is some level of protection for their data. What are the benefits of SOC 2 for service organizations? SOC 2 certification is essential for any service organization hosting or accessing customers' or partners' information. It provides organizations with many benefits. 1. SOC 2 certification is a key differentiator and provides a competitive advantage in the marketplace. If you aren't certified and there's a SOC 2 compliance requirement on your next prospective client's bid, you may have to pass on the bid or perhaps not get a renewal for a contract that you have had in place for many years. Being certified demonstrates to your clients that you are a legitimate enterprise and can be trusted to handle their information securely. SOC 2 certification also allows you to enter markets where a SOC 2 is a prerequisite, and in some cases, you can't enter a particular market without a SOC 2 certification. Without the SOC 2 certification, service organizations may open themselves up to hundreds of security audits or questionnaires from their clients. Multiple client audits or questionnaires may not be supportable by the organization's staff and resources. SOC 2 certification can save you time, money, and difficulty. It reduces the cost and administrative burden of multiple audits or many questionnaires over the same process. Do it once and use it many times. It eliminates multiple, lengthy security questionnaires, processes, and audits. What does SOC examination cover? A SOC 2 audit examines a service organization's description of its system, the suitability of the design of its controls, and the operating effectiveness of those controls relevant to SOC 2 trust service criteria, which are security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. Criteria for a SOC examination. There are two types of criteria which are applicable in an SOC examination. The first is description criteria, used by the service auditors to evaluate the description of the service organization system, service, controls, risks, design, and the implementation of the controls, etc. Management also uses these criteria when preparing the description of the service organization system and service. The second one is trust services criteria, related to security, availability, processing, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy, which are used to evaluate the suitability of the design and the operating effectiveness of the controls. As I mentioned, SOC trust services criteria are classified into the following 5 categories: security, confidentiality, availability, process integrity, and privacy. Let's dig a little deeper into what each of those means. 1. Security criteria, also called common criteria, assesses whether information and systems are protected against unauthorized access, use, and modifications that affect the entity's ability to meet its objectives. Security criteria are organized into 7 common criteria. 1. Organization and management. 2. Communications. 3. Risk management and design and implementation of controls. 4. Monitoring of controls. 5. Logical and physical access controls. 6. System operations. 7. Change management. The availability criteria refer to the accessibility of the system, products, or services as stipulated by a contract or service level agreement, SLA. The processing integrity criteria addresses whether or not a system achieves its purpose. For example, processing transactions such as payments, or delivering the right data at the right price at the right time. Accordingly, data processing must be complete, valid, accurate, timely, and authorized. However, processing integrity does not necessarily imply data integrity. If data contains errors prior to being input into the system, detecting them is not usually the responsibility of the processing entity. Confidentiality criteria. Data is considered confidential if its access and disclosure are restricted to a specific set of persons or organizations. Examples may include data intended only for company personnel, as well as business plans, intellectual property, internal price lists, and other types of sensitive information. The privacy criteria assesses the system's collection, use, retention, disclosure, and disposal of personal information measured against an organization's privacy notice. Moreover, SOC 2 Trust Services Privacy Criteria encompasses the service organization's specific processes that address each of the following as applicable. Notice of the service organization's privacy commitments and practices. Data subjects' choices regarding the use and disclosure of their personal information. Data subjects' rights to access their personal information for review and update. An inquiry, complaint, and dispute resolution process. SOC engagements include SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, and SOC for Cybersecurity. SOC 1 refers to the examination and report of an organization's internal controls relevant to financial reporting, while SOC 2 and SOC 3 provide information and the auditor's opinion about the suitability of the design of controls and the effectiveness of controls relevant to security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. SOC 3 report, in comparison with SOC 2, is a summary and does not include controls, tests, and results. There are two types of SOC 2, Type 1 and Type 2. SOC 2 Type 1 is the auditor's assessment of the system and design of controls, and how it achieves control objectives in the system description, as of a specific date, and without showing tests of control or results. SOC 2 Type 2 provides the same auditor's opinion as Type 1, plus it indicates if the controls are operating effectively. Note that the opinion is operative throughout a specific period for the report and shows descriptions of the service auditor's tests of controls and results of tests. Let's look at the system definition in SOC 2. In the SOC 2 examination, a system is defined by and classified into 5 categories: infrastructure, software, procedures, and data that are designed, implemented, and operated by people to achieve the organization's business objectives. Infrastructure refers to the collection of physical or virtual resources that supports an overall IT environment, including the physical environment and related structures, IT, and hardware. People refers to the personnel involved in the governance, management, operation, security, and use of a system. Developers, operators, user entity, and vendor personnel. The automated and manual procedures refer to how service activities are initiated, authorized, performed, delivered, and reported. The software includes the application programs and IT system software that supports application programs, including operating systems, middleware, and utilities, and the databases used. Data includes customer information, confidential business information, and intellectual properties. The scope and boundaries of a system addressed by a SOC examination refer to all the system components that store and process data. These components support several stages of the service life, such as initiation, authorization, processing, recording, and reporting of the transactions processed for or services provided to user entities. In the following example, only the highlighted systems are in the boundary. SOC 2 report structure and contents. A SOC 2 examination results in the issuance of a SOC 2 report. That report includes 4 key components. 1. Auditor's opinion. 2. Management's assertion. 3. System description. 4. Controls and test description. Section 1 is the Service Auditor Report or opinion. This section consists of 1. The scope of the examination. 2. The service auditor's opinion about whether a. The description of the service organization system is presented in accordance with the description criteria, or b. The controls described in the description were suitably designed and operated effectively to provide reasonable assurance that the service organization system commitments and system requirements were achieved based on the applicable trust services criteria. 3. The responsibilities of both the service organization and the service auditors. 4. A description of the test of controls. 5. Restricted use. Section 2 of the report is the management assertion. This provides the reader with the facts and assertions made by the management of the service organization related to the systems under audit, which includes the service provided, a system description, the control objectives, the risks identified, stating the selected criteria for their assertion, designing, implementing, and documenting suitable and effective controls. Section 3 covers the system and service description, also called narrative. This section includes the service organization's explanation of the system, including the infrastructure, software, people, process, and data in accordance with the description criteria. It generally consists of a description of the following: an organizational overview, the services provided, a description of the entity-level controls related to the control environment, a risk assessment process, monitoring activities, and information and communication process. Procedures by which services are provided and transactions are accounted for. Related control objectives and activities. Complementary user entity controls, called CUEC, also known as User Organization Control, that the service organization assumes will be in place at the user entities. Identifying and describing complementary sub-service organization controls, called SCOC. Section 4 details the structure and operation of controls. This section further includes a description of the controls in place at the service organization and their objectives in terms of meeting the requirements, how the controls are implemented, how the controls are tested, the results of control testing, any expectations or deviations noted by the service auditors, and management's response to the exceptions noted. Here is a sample of SOC 2 test of controls and results, which includes trust service criteria, control objective, implementation, examinations procedures, and the results. Now, let's talk about SOC for cybersecurity. SOC for cybersecurity is the examination and report on the entity's cybersecurity risk management program and the effectiveness of controls within the program. The report includes 3 key components. 1. The description of the entity's cybersecurity risk management program. 2. Management's assertion. And 3. The service auditor's opinion about whether the description is presented accurately and whether the controls within the cybersecurity risk management program were effective in achieving the entity's cybersecurity objectives based on the control criteria. Let's look at the differences between SOC 2 for service organizations and SOC for cybersecurity. Purpose: SOC 2 provides information about controls at the service organization relevant to security availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. SOC for cybersecurity demonstrates the organization's cybersecurity risk management program at its maturity. Scope: SOC 2 is scoped to a specific service organization, a business unit within the service organization, or a specific service line. Whereas SOC for cybersecurity includes the entire organization's cybersecurity risk management program. Subject of the assertion and examination. SOC 2 includes the description of the system and effectiveness of the service organization's controls, including infrastructure, software, people, procedures, and data. SOC for cybersecurity, on the other hand, includes the description of the cybersecurity risk management program and effectiveness of the controls at the organization. Baseline and standards for implementation and evaluation. For SOC 2, the baseline is limited to the trust service criteria, which are aligned to COSO. And for SOC for cybersecurity, the baseline can rely on or leverage any major security frameworks and standard, such as ISO or NIST. Responsible party. With SOC 2, the service organization management is responsible. And for SOC for cyber, the entity's management is responsible. Third-party risk. In the SOC 2 report, you can carve out sub-service organizations, but must communicate due diligence and vendor management process in place. In SOC for cyber, you cannot carve out sub-service organizations. If a third party has access to company data, it must be included in the report. Inclusion of sensitive information in the report. The controls matrix is included in the SOC 2 report and may include sensitive information. Thus, it is a restricted report. SOC for cybersecurity audit work is completed, but the controls matrix section is not included in the report because this is very sensitive. Distribution. SOC 2 has a restricted distribution. SOC for cyber is a general distribution. And here is a sample risk assessment report, which includes controls, objective, operating procedures, implementations, findings, risk level, effort to fix, and the response. As you've learned, this process has many elements, nuances, and steps that must be considered for successful certification. InfoGuard provides SOC readiness and certification services to provide organizations with the smoothest path to success in the shortest time. 1. InfoGuard Readiness and Preparedness Service. Organizations typically fail their first-time audit with a long list of deficiencies. This will be costly and time-consuming and can be avoided. InfoGuard SOC Readiness Service prepares organizations to meet SOC requirements and assist with the implementation of about 200 security controls. The service includes conducting discovery and learning about products, services, and processes, conducting gap assessment against SOC 2 trust service controls, developing a remediation and action plans, assisting with remediation and implementation for governance controls, such as developing security policies, standards, and procedures, technical controls, such as securing networks, intrusion, detection prevention, cloud security, access controls, identification and authentication, security monitoring, etc., and operational controls, such as vulnerability, patch, and change control management. InfoGuard also provides SOC audit and certification service. An InfoGuard service auditor can design and perform procedures to examine the controls, obtain sufficient appropriate evidence to provide a description of the controls test, the results, and evidence that the controls were suitably designed and operated effectively, and to generate a SOC certification report. The certification report reasonably ensures that the service commitments and system requirements were achieved at the service organization based on the applicable trust services criteria. Before service organizations engage a service auditor to perform a SOC 2 examination, management must make a variety of decisions that affect the nature, timing, and extent of procedures to be performed in that examination, including the following. First, you need to develop a project plan. Then, conduct discovery and identify and describe the products and services that the service organization provides to user entities. Identify and describe the system and system requirements used to provide those services. Identify and document scope and boundary. Identify not only where the data is stored, but also where system data flows, as well as critical dependencies. Identify security requirements and trust services categories to be included within the scope of the examination. Design, implement, operate, monitor, and document controls that are appropriately designed and will operate efficiently to reasonably assure that the service organizations will achieve its service commitments and requirements based on the applicable criteria. Review and document product or service security architecture. Determine whether a Type 1 or Type 2 SOC 2 examination will be performed. Determine the period the examination will cover. In Type 1 examination, the time frame is a specific point in time. For a Type 2 examination, it's for a specific period of time. Identify and analyze risks that could prevent the service organization from achieving its service commitments. Identify subservice organizations and their services. Identify complementary subservice organization controls. Identify controls that a subservice organization expects the service organization to implement. Identify complementary user entity controls and user entity responsibilities. These are specific controls that the user entities must perform in order to benefit from the organization's service. Conduct gap assessment in accordance with applicable SOC 2 requirements to identify deficiencies. Develop a remediation and action plan to address the identified gaps. Execute the remediation plan and address deficiencies in governance controls, technical controls, operational controls. Leverage the service of a security provider, like InfoGuard, to provide readiness services and prepare you for a successful SOC audit. Conduct audit against SOC 2 requirements and generate certification report. It all takes about 6 to 9 months. Let's learn about cybersecurity services that you need to have in place for security and compliance. Information easily leaves the organization when there is no security measure. No single security measure provides complete protection. Several layers of measures must be applied to provide complete coverage. InfoGuard provides multi-layered cybersecurity services. Each layer adds an additional level of protection. At the core is our data security service, which includes encryption and tokenization, DLP, or file integrity monitoring. The system that contains and manipulates the data must also be secured. Some controls, such as system hardening, host intrusion prevention, and system access controls, must be in place to protect the system. Stepping one layer further, the system is a part of a network that requires network security, which includes designing and implementing a secure network with all applicable controls, such as network intrusion prevention and access controls. InfoGuard Cloud Security Services include Zero Trust, Cloud Access Security Broker, CASB, and Federated Authentication. InfoGuard's IT security operations services include vulnerability and patch management, security monitoring, and incident response. InfoGuard also provides compliance readiness and audit for standards, including ISO 27001, PCI, HIPAA, SOC 2, SOC for Cybersecurity, FISMA, FedRAMP, and CMMC. At the outermost layer, InfoGuard services include security governance, one of the essential security aspects at the organizational level. We develop a security management program and framework, security policies and standards, a plan for security risk management, and virtual CISO services. InfoGuard Cybersecurity is your one-stop cybersecurity service provider and a resource for all your compliance certifications and consulting needs. Join the many other organizations that have trusted and partnered with InfoGuard to protect their information. Thank you, and please contact us to schedule a free consultation.